Welcome to the More Life, Less Drama podcast with mindset expert and master executive coach, Prue Sulicic, who will teach you how to finish your first goal and then every goal using her simple, proven formula. If you're ready to live more life, have more fun, and reach your potential with less drama, you're in the right place.
Hello, More Life, Less Drama listeners. Welcome back to another episode. We are on episode 72, which is pretty cool. Being 72 episodes in a row that I've done, 72 weeks. It's a hell of a long time. I get surprised at myself because I was a person that never ever followed through consistently with anything for a long period of time. So to do this is a real testament to the practices that I live every day and also teach you. Because it's the practice of starting small and building things up and introducing things while still doing life that actually allows you to achieve your goals. And so I am my own example of what is possible over here, because I know many of you as well that are listening to this episode are possibly at that stage where you're like, I just can't follow through with anything. But that is off topic. Today we're talking about something different. And that is learning from your mistakes. Okay, so let's just start by acknowledging that we all make mistakes. Some mistakes are small and don't really create any ripples or waves. Some of those medium ones that, do sting a little bit and are possibly more visible to others. And then there's those big ones where we do something that's very visible and people see our mistakes, and it might bring a lot of shame, it might bring embarrassment, it might bring disappointment with yourself or, projected onto you from others. I just want to start by acknowledging that we all make mistakes and, there's no getting out of it. There is no getting out of making mistakes. We cannot get through life without having these small, medium or large mistakes come up in our lives. Some people have more mistakes that are a lot more visible because they're out there doing a lot more things visibly than others. But the whole idea about making mistakes that I want to touch on today is actually learning from your mistakes. And I say this knowing that you already understand this concept. That yes, what a smart idea, Prue, to learn from our mistakes and not make the same mistakes again and again. But the truth is, there's things that prevent us from learning from our mistakes and prevent us from doing something different. A lot of it comes back to our own self-concept. Sometimes it's our inability to have a new perspective on what is being offered. And sometimes we just self-sabotage, plain and simple. So let's think about just embracing our mistakes first. I have made so many mistakes, and there are some that I still carry with me today, but just acknowledging and embracing our own mistakes is really important. And then there are mistakes that I make on a daily or weekly basis that actually allow me to learn, because those mistakes tend to be the mistakes that I give something a go and it doesn't work out, and I get some instant feedback from it, and therefore I can choose to do something differently. And it is something that I practice in my life and I teach others to practice as well. The whole concept of failing fast and failing forward is inside the Finishers Club, and I think it's a really important module and a really important lesson to learn. And so I'm doing those on an everyday basis. But also, what can happen is those mistakes that I was talking about earlier that you can carry a lot of shame with can be bigger things. There's things that I've done and I couldn't see at the time how they were affecting others. But with time and with consistent compassion for myself, I can see now, there's a few things that I did a couple of years ago one thing in particular, that I look back on now, and at the time I couldn't see the mistake that I made. people told me that I had made a mistake, and I was too forthright in my own "no, I am right" moment that I couldn't see it. But a couple of years on, I have the ability, because I really practice self-compassion, I really practice what I preach about going inward to figure things out, and that is my view is not the only view. And so now a couple of years on, I can see, like, yeah, if I could go back and choose something different in that moment, I would choose something different, because I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. I don't want to be so forthright and stubborn in my own perspective on life that it affects others. Like, that is not who I want to be. And so ultimately, over the last 2 years where I've had time to process this, like, I get it. Like, I can see it. And it's really important to take responsibility and acknowledge where you can improve. So that's basically what I want you to take away from this podcast today, is where can you improve? What mistakes have you made that you can reflect on, even if it takes a couple of years? It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to take 5 minutes, but that you can not make the same mistake again. Because given the opportunity to do and follow like the same path that I did a couple of years ago, I won't do it. Like, now I know what the consequences were of that, and I'm not willing to carry those consequences. And so that's the other point. It's like when you're making decisions, like it goes back to the decision-making process, are you willing to take the consequences of the decision that you make, whether it's good or bad? And so, yeah, there's a whole lot of like precursor stuff in there as well to help you make decisions, and so you don't make the mistake that potentially could hurt others or carry some consequence, negative consequence. Sometimes there's positive consequence as well, but the mistakes that I'm talking about today can actually be a negative consequence in your life and in others' lives. So I just want you to take a moment now and think to yourself, do you make the same mistake again and again? Like, do you come up to the same resistance? Do you come up to the same feedback? Do you come up with the same things that people say to you about maybe the things that you do or don't do? That is constant feedback and maybe highlighting a mistake that you're making in life, yet you keep making the same mistake, like you keep doing the same thing. And that is something that can be holding you back. Because as much as I'm all about, if we're just going to put it in simple terms, like the growth mindset over the fixed mindset, which is really easy above and below the line type of thinking, if you want to be above the line in your growth mindset, yet you are unwilling to change your behavior to get a different outcome, possibly you're still in the fixed mindset, the below the line. And as much as you think that you're doing all this other stuff that is above the line, if you're continually making the same mistakes again and again and are unwilling to actually sit with that mistake and understand it and decide that you don't want to make that same mistake again, do you then pull yourself above the line and be in the growth mindset part of your life? Because mistakes can hold you back, and making the same mistakes can hold you back even more. I think Einstein said, if you do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, that is the definition of insanity. Okay? So I want you to learn from your mistakes. Just as I learned from my mistake, like the big one that I made, even though it took a lot of time, I'm willing to go through that process as well. And I don't want to make that same mistake again. You know, it'd be no good if I did that time and time again and everyone's telling me and giving me the feedback and I'm like, no, I'm right, I'm just not changing anything. It's like, that's not the point. Like, the point is to learn from your mistakes. And so what mistake are you making over and over again that holds you back from being above the line, of being and living above the line in that growth mindset and in the growth state of life? Because remember, we are all meant to grow. We are all meant to keep reiterating ourselves to this better, higher level version of ourselves. That is the actual goal of life. We're not meant to just stay the same. And we're definitely not meant to make the same mistakes over and over again. So this is where self-awareness is really important. It allows you to be that observer of your own behavior, of your own thoughts and feelings and the results that you're getting in life, and to recognize those patterns. Because sometimes you're oblivious to the mistakes you're making. Just sometimes. Maybe you're not surrounded by people that give you any feedback. Maybe you're surrounded with all the people that are like yes people, that everything that you do, they want to please you, so they're saying that you're doing everything beautifully and perfectly all the time, which, you know, by the way, is never usually the case. That's why, if you remember back onto my podcast where I talked about building your dream team, it's important to surround yourself with people that have different roles in your life, because you need yes people, you always need those, but you also need the people that give you feedback about what you could be doing wrong or how you could potentially change things up to get a different result. Like, those people are so important. So being self-aware is like the number one thing, and it always comes back to self-awareness. You can't do anything without self-awareness when it comes to personal growth. So just know that there are patterns out there. There are things that you do without even knowing maybe, and the solution to solving that problem is self-awareness. So how do you reflect on your mistakes? Going back to that mistake that I made a couple of years ago, my body knew that it was a mistake. Like, literally in the moment, it knew it. As soon as I got the first feedback about the mistake that I made, I knew, like, viscerally that that was a mistake, that I shouldn't have done it, okay? But the funny thing is that I doubled down on it. And I know you've done something similar. You've done something, you've got feedback that it wasn't taken the right way or whatever happened, and then your body reacted to it, and you knew that you made a mistake, and then instead of like submitting to the mistake and going through the reflection process straight away, you actually doubled down. You like dug your heels in, and you really were like, no, I'm not changing my mind on this, just being super stubborn here, and I'm right all the way, everybody else is wrong. So I know that you've got that experience as well. Like, we can't get to this stage of our life, I'm coming up 50, you can't get to that stage of life without having done this. And that's what happened initially, and it's totally okay. I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong way about how to get through this. You get through it how you get through it. However it comes up is the right way. There's no wrong way. So once that happened and my mind went into fight, my body submitted to it, but my mind went into fight because I wanted to be right, because my ego is there. Once that subsided, and it does subside, like you do get to have a time of some self-reflection. Once it subsides, you can then just touch on it, start asking yourself some questions about things. Maybe you're just allowing your mind to wander to start with, and the possible of what ifs, like what if I didn't do that, or what if I did that differently, or how if I was in my most highest version of myself and the person that I was super proud to be, how would that person respond in this situation? And just allow it to go through the process, okay? And it can be quite a natural thing, or you can speed up the process by having a really great practice for it, which is being in awareness, thought downloads, using the model tool that I teach, and choosing a new way to be, which ultimately is the best way to get through it. Like, it's the fastest and most efficient, because we want to do things efficiently. Otherwise, like me, it might take you a couple of years to process through if you don't do it intentionally, even longer sometimes. So I'm encouraging you to do those steps. It's like, allow the things to happen. Like, sometimes you can't do these things straight away because of the emotional, the block that you'll have from your emotions. Like, you just might be super elevated in those emotions. But then allow yourself to journal. Write down all the thoughts. Your thoughts about them, your thoughts about the thing that happened, your thoughts about the actual circumstance, your assumption of thoughts from others, get it all out, put it all on paper and see what comes up, because most of the stuff that is going to come up is a story that you're telling yourself, and you can resolve it really quickly by, asking great questions for proof gathering and figuring out what that looks like for others in real time and the reality of the circumstance. It's such a great exercise to do. And then you can definitely plug things into the model and understand it on a deeper level. And then you can also then choose and make decisions about how you want to move through this and what that looks like in the future. And how will you know if that is going to happen again, and how would you prevent it from happening? All those things are really important. But there is value, I want to tell you, there is value in making mistakes, okay? And it's the mistakes that we make that are new, that are valuable. So you can imagine if I didn't go through that process of reflection and figuring out what that looks like and who I want to be in that situation again, I could possibly keep making those mistakes. And look, that's never going to make me feel great, because ultimately we want to feel a certain way in life. And if I was doing those same things over and over again, I would feel terrible all the time. So that's not what we want to do. But making new mistakes is really important. So I say make mistakes, but make them new. Don't have the same mistake over and over again. So the benefit of trying new things is like high on the scale for personal growth. Even if you don't want to get outside your comfort zone, understanding that it's really important to try new things. Actually, on that, I had a client just today message me and say, hey, I'd love for you to brainstorm some ideas about how to get out of my comfort zone. And then she gave a couple of examples about what she has done in the past that really pushed and stretched her comfort zone. And so that's currently in my brain. I'm like, okay, how can I push this client out of her comfort zone and make new mistakes? And then she's going to learn from the mistakes that she makes, and then she will implement them in her own life on a daily basis, so she doesn't make the same mistake again and again. So that's the benefit of making new mistakes. You get to learn from it if you have a process. So to make new mistakes opposed to making the same mistakes, you have to actually do different things. So you can't just show up in life doing the same thing the same way. You have to maybe think about a new approach. You might actually have to ask for feedback. If you're surrounded by yes people, you might have to seek out people that will give you feedback. And believe me, there will be people out there, so don't fool yourself to think that you've got nobody that will give you feedback. Someone will give you feedback. You need to ask specific people for specific feedback. Don't just ask for vague feedback, because most people are just going to go, yeah, that was great, I really liked it, and or this or that, and give you positive feedback. Because look, let's be honest, positive feedback is so much easier to give. Negative feedback, it does even feel difficult for the person giving the feedback to give that feedback to somebody, because potentially, you could upset somebody. So think of a practical way in your own life where you can stop a repetitive mistake being made. Like, to break the pattern. Like, what is a mistake that you know that you're making over and over again? Like, what is it? Actually, on that, let's have a look at my little list that I created. Okay, procrastinating. If you're doing it over and over again and it's affecting your life and you're not achieving your goals and you're not living the life that you desire or love, maybe procrastination is the mistake that you haven't learnt yet, and you're just keeping on doing the same thing over and over, like putting off tasks to the last minute, despite knowing that it causes you stress and anxiety and gives you lower quality work. So maybe that's one thing. Maybe you're overcommitting, so that might be a mistake that you make over and over again as well. You say yes to everything, even though your brain and your energy levels are going, please don't book anything else into the calendar because I don't have any energy. I've got deadlines. I need other things to do. I have other things to do. So maybe that's your mistake that you're making, overcommitting. Maybe you are not asking for help. I can put my hand up to this one for sure. You try to do everything yourself instead of asking for assistance and for help and like getting the support that you need. So maybe that's what you're doing. Maybe you are neglecting self-care over and over. You know that self-care is going to really work in your favor if you allow yourself to carve out some time and to have a nighttime routine or a morning routine that is really going to support you, but you continually not do it. You continually overcommit yourself to others, say yes to things, or do things last minute. And therefore you don't have the time to commit to yourself. Maybe you're reacting instead of responding. Like I've talked to a lot of women and coached a lot of women on this very topic. You know, actually, let's be honest, all of these things that I'm giving you, I've coached women on a lot of. But reacting instead of responding is a mistake that you might be making over and over and over again. And even just like framing it as a mistake might trigger you. You just never know. Like all these things you might be thinking of, they're not mistakes, but I'm not intentionally doing them, but they are still mistakes. Like they're things that are not the greatest for your life. And so to course correct, you actually have to acknowledge them as a mistake, something that you're doing over and over again that is getting you the same result, and that if you course corrected, you could actually get a different result. So that's a different way of looking at it. So reacting instead of responding, which means just like in my example, I reacted, I doubled down and dug my heels in. Maybe that's something that you do as well. And maybe you yell at your kids. Maybe you yell at your partner. Maybe you go into hermit mode when things get really hard and you like disengage and disconnect. So maybe you're reacting instead of actually responding to make things different. Maybe you are avoiding difficult conversations, and look, I know I avoid these like the plague, and so this could be a mistake that keeps me in the same space. Like if I want to have a decent conversation with my husband around a hard topic, you know, money, sex, relationships with our kids, in-laws, who knows, whatever the conversation is, and if I keep putting it off, the more that I put it off, the worse and maybe the more bitter and resentment I feel, and actually can exacerbate problems, rather than what a difficult conversation will do is maybe allow some problem solving and, you know, connection and figuring out how you can work through it together. So maybe that's what you're doing. Maybe you're avoiding difficult conversations over and over and over again just to keep calm and, you know, peace because you don't like conflict, but possibly that is something that can be considered a mistake. Another one is neglecting planning or preparation. I've done this so many times myself. I feel like I've actually healed myself a little bit more from this. And what this actually could look like is jumping into projects or decisions without a clear plan, which can then lead to mistakes, and therefore you might have to redo your work again because it's not the best. So how many times do you do that? You think, oh, I'll just like fudge this up really quickly, and then you find yourself back there a couple of weeks later fixing your fudging. So maybe that's what you're doing over and over as well. And then the last one is maybe you are making the mistake of chasing perfection. Maybe you want to start your own business, but you think you need everything lined up to start with. Maybe you have a super high expectation of yourself to look a certain way before you step out of the house. Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe you think you should have all these things and systems set up in your house for anybody else to come over and visit. Maybe you have to clean the house and have it spotless before you allow anybody in your front door. Maybe chasing perfection is actually creating more drama in your life than just allowing people to come in your house when it's dirty. Like, who cares? Nobody cares. It's an actual fact. Nobody really cares. You care, I know. But chasing perfection can lead to a life filled with a lot of internal drama. So there were just some ones that I put together to help you understand what type of mistakes that you could be making in life, like putting in some context with it. And the biggest one that I see a lot of women making in particular is putting everybody else over herself. Putting your family and your work and others first will lead to burnout, most definitely. you think that it's leading to fulfillment, but really what I see a lot of the time is, and just know that most of my women come and present this to me, what happens is they're actually creating resentment and bitterness towards their partners and their families, because they are constantly making that mistake of putting everybody else over themselves. It was so clear in a conversation that I had with a client this week. Anytime that we talked about like moving through and doing things differently and what's stopping you from making decisions, like that was basically the crux of it. Every time she talked about her partner and then her kids first. And I was like, okay, you've got this wrong. You've got it back to front. Like, you should be at the top of the pile. You should be the first person that you think of when making decisions, not the last person, or not the person at all, as was the case really for her. So that could be a mistake that you're making on repeat that is keeping you in perpetual frustration, unhappiness, loneliness, dissatisfaction, unfulfillment in life. And so it could be possibly one of those things that you could reverse by just putting yourself at the top of the pile. So I just want you to think about that. Is that something that you do on repeat and don't learn from? And I know some of these topics are broad, I realize that, but I just want to give you an idea and give you a bit of a foundation about where you can start stepping into awareness and make changes in your life that support you. Remember, there's nobody else that is supporting you. Like, I know we've got friends and families and children and community, but ultimately when it comes down to it, you have to support you. And then it can get really granular as well. Like, I'm talking about big broad topics here, but like my example where I did a thing, I had feedback, and I knew it was a mistake, and I dug my heels in, and it's just taking me some time to understand what mistake I made, and if I'd make it again, given the opportunity, or what I would do differently. And so that's what I want you to take from this episode, that no matter what you do, making new mistakes is firstly great. Doesn't feel so great, I get that, but making new mistakes often is really good because it actually helps you grow into the person that you really want to be. Not just this like covered up version of who you think you should be. So go out, I want you to make mistakes, and some are going to be those small ones, some are going to be like medium, and some are going to be huge. And look, I know those huge ones, especially if they're super visible, are not going to be fun, but I want you to learn from them. I don't want you to continually make the same mistake over and over again and then just be like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Nothing's changing in my life. So it's up to you to support you so you can be the best version of yourself, full stop. That's going to be the reward. It's like, you are going to be super proud of who you are, and you know that making mistakes is part of life and that it's really important, and not everybody's perfect, and that we all make mistakes, and as long as we're learning from them, it's okay. Like, some will be harder than others to get over, and some will just be like so easy, and that you'll just learn really quickly from it, and you'll pivot and do something different next time, and you learn from it really quickly. Okay, my friends, that's it. That's all I wanted to talk to you about today. Go out, make mistakes, learn from those ones that you've already made, give yourself some compassion, lots of love and some time, and let me know what mistakes you are making on a daily basis and how I can support you. Before we wrap up, I just want to mention that I have created an 8-week series that is being held every Thursday night. It's called the Reconnection Series. I decided to do this quite spontaneously because I felt there was a disconnection within myself personally, and also for others. And being the coach that I am, I know the importance of reconnecting back to yourself. So this 8-week series is totally free. It's being held once a week for the next 8 weeks, starting the 19th of September. And even if you don't get to come to the live calls, which are available for the next 8 weeks, but even if you don't get to come to the live calls, they're being streamed live into a Facebook group, and also you have access to the recordings in perpetuity, basically. And, you know, I'm going to put it up somewhere on my website so you can actually access them and take away what you need. I just want you to come home to yourself and really get out of that whole mentality of being super busy, being distracted, looking after everybody else but yourself, and really support you and your own growth. So that is on offer. I would love to see you in there. And if you join live, you get the connection with me and whoever else comes live. Plus, we get to have great conversations as well. And just connecting with like-minded people can be all that you need. So join me, my friends, on this 8-week journey in the Reconnection series, and I look forward to hosting them with you. Okay, have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to More Life, Less Drama. If you're ready to finish your goals, Prue invites you to join her inside the Finishers Club, where you will learn how to finish your first intentional goal, the hardest part, then complete every goal you set your mind to using her simple formula. Visit head-coach.com.au to get started today.